Welcome to another episode of Chasing Self Actualization. My name is Marisol Sanchez.
And I am Janaiah von Hassel.
How are you?
I am doing well. Today's really exciting. We have our guest, Chad Porter, who is a motivational speaker and author of the book Severed Dreams. And I was really excited about having him on our podcast. He's somebody...
He was on the list first day we started talking about guests. You had said that you had scripted, I think, or dreamed about this episode.
Right. So one of my manifesting tricks, so to speak, is I will post-date something for 3 or 5 years in the future, and I'll just write the day the way I'd like to see it. So he was a person like I had post-dated it. I'll have to look it up because it'd be great if it was like today. But I post-dated it for a few years out and wrote about doing a podcast with him. And I had, hit him up a couple times with the idea, we should do a podcast. I love his mission. I love his work. And he's very involved in volunteering in the special needs community, which is something that's really important to me. So I've seen him at some of the events I took my son to and just thought, he'd be great to do a podcast with.
And he's got such an amazing and motivational story. I'm super excited for everyone to hear it. But I have to say, Miss Co-host, I spent most of that interview just in awe of you. And as a co-host, as a human being, as a mother, sister, watching you grow just in this short time that I've gotten to know you, but just to show up today and be authentic and be raw, which listeners, you'll get to experience. It was just, I felt honored and I'm grateful to you.
That today's episode, as it played out, really even surprised me. It wasn't my intention to share that I was in a time of struggle. I've been so excited about the podcast that I have sort of tried to separate, okay, I'm struggling with this, but then I'm excited about this. Let's just focus on the thing I'm excited about. Mm-hmm. And I'll share that with the listeners. And more, I'm realizing that I haven't seen a lot of role models in this space, talking about spirituality and motivation, and, living authentically your best life. It always seems like it's a mind shift away and we need to just focus on gratitude and get to this place where we're feeling great. And if we're not in that place, there's something wrong.
I just want to say I'm laughing because I've been podcasting for 10 years and I've never woken up in a good mood, not once. Never felt like I had it together. And it is something that I have to actively every single day get into a positive mindset. And many days it does not happen. Many days it doesn't happen. So, you and I go back and forth on this. We're not subject matter experts.
Right.
We are chasing it.
No, I think today I was I was going to just sort of put my podcast face on and do this. And then I was if I'm feeling like this today, maybe I'm just feeling down today. Mm-hmm. We have to have listeners that are too. And here we are talking to a motivational speaker. Let me take advantage of this.
Motivate me.
Motivate me. So I think it is a part of how I'm really wanting to show up authentically in this podcast for our listeners and for myself, and recognize that, this idea I've ever had that I'm going to figure out the formula to a joyful, successful life and never feel bad again is a little bit delulu.
And it happened on episode number 5. No, I'm kidding.
And we're going to just be on mountaintops and in the valleys. And what can be different about this valley?
What you said something before we started recording that your sister said, and I thought it was such an amazing quote, that no one from the rooftops or high tops.
Yeah, well, I said to her, this is literally a dream come true. I've been wanting to do this podcast with Chad Porter for years. And I was and I am just not excited about it today. I'm just struggling and I'm not feeling happy. And even this exciting thing, and she said, well, a lot of people tuning in are in the valley and you're there with them. Do this for them. You don't have to pretend you're somewhere else. Just be where you're at, because there's going to be something that comes out of this podcast today that's meant to be said and heard from there. And I think, something I'm learning in our journey with this podcast is that there's no place in our lives that's useless. There's no, there's purpose in the pain. There's treasures in the trenches. And these are all great cliches, but in the moments that we're in them, it feels like I'm less valuable here. I don't have as much to offer here. That's the feeling. It's like, I need to, and even when we get into this interview, Chad Porter said at one point, I just want to be in the coma till this is over. Like, we're thinking, like, I just don't want to feel this way, and I have nothing to offer. And I think the biggest difference in my life as I'm going through a challenging time is to recognize that that's just not true. We have something to offer from everywhere. We have something to receive from everywhere. That much I knew. We have something to offer from everywhere. And I think that's been a new thought for me.
Yeah, and the shared experience. I mean, we have a lot of them in the human experience, and you're going through one right now, and I'm sure there's listeners who are watchers. I have to get used to the
listeners and watchers.
This is like my 5th haircut in 5 podcasts. So.
I have yet to watch a podcast. I've listened to them, but
I've only done all my podcasts have always just been audio.
Yes.
This is a new experience for me, and I hate it. And I actually was this morning thinking, I was actually trying to do a TikTok, to be honest. But what I was trying to say in this TikTok was this realization that for me personally, my evolution, my growth has happened in 2 places: in pain and suffering, and out of my comfort zone. And this is out of my comfort zone.
Marisol, though, this kind of ties into everything we're saying on a more tangible level, but it's recognizing that no matter what your hair looks like today or how motivated I was to get up and turn on the coffee pot and do the things that needed to be done, here we sit, and we're not always going to have the perfect hair.
I may never.
We're not always going to have the perfect morning, and it is uncomfortable. And I think this is like such a experience for me and you as well, that this is something I've always wanted to do, but the entire process of it has me out of my comfort zone, and I'm allowing it to as well. And I think we both are at a place in life where we're allowing it to be, I could have come on and done a chipper episode and nobody would be the wiser.
Yeah. It's, I think, impossible for me to even pretend to be self-actualized. It's just, I feel so far removed from it, but I know that I'm chasing it. So for me, this experience, every time I've done a show, a podcast, I've evolved. Something has happened. And it's not like how I started to where I was at the end of that podcast. I'm not the same person. Yeah. And so I'm in the uncomfortableness of, I don't know who I am right now. And I'm 50 and I don't know.
We definitely, put together a podcast that we want to listen to. I'm like, I don't know if anyone else is going to listen, but I can't wait to listen to today's episode because it was good.
And you know what? With that, we should go right into it because your guest.
Okay, with no further ado, Chad Porter. Hello and welcome. Chad Porter's with us here today. Chad Porter is a motivational speaker and the author of the book Severed Dreams. So Chad, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking me to do this. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Chad, we met a few years back, and at the time I was kicking off doing some motivational speaking and asked you to just sort of share with me the ropes. And I learned a little bit about your story and why you're out there sharing with people your personal story to help motivate them. I would love if you'd share that now with our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So the journey starts, early. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version, then we can break everything down. But I was a highly active athlete in high school and starting to be looked at to play college football, even as a freshman in high school. And I was also started water skiing when I was about 4 years old and started barefoot water skiing at 10 and then just grew into, that's what I did all summer long. My parents were teachers and coaches, so we would go to this small lake in North Carolina, White Lake, and we would join a professional water ski team, and we would do these ski shows all over. And then the summer between my freshman and sophomore year in high school, we were doing a ski show right outside of Benson at Tucker Lake, and it was the one day that lake ever had boats on it, and we were doing a show, and everything was amazing. And the last act of the day is a pyramid, when we built a pyramid with climbing on top of each other's shoulders, and So we had gone around the lake a couple of times. Everything was amazing. We dropped in the middle of the lake, and we got into the back of the boat. There were 9 kids, and all the people in the pyramid were all kids, 8 to 18 years of age. And so we all got in the boat, came back towards shore, and the boat turned around backwards. We jumped out of the back of the boat, high-fiving, big smiles on our faces. Everything was perfect. The 2 dads started just cleaning up the boat, and all of this felt like it, was 20, 30 minutes. It was a few seconds. And the dad standing up in the boat just knew something wasn't right. He could feel the boat still moving. He could feel the engine still engaged. And he knew there were 9 kids behind the boat. He yelled at the driver. The driver knew he had it in neutral, and he yelled at him, turn off the boat, it's going in reverse. And so it startled him. He spun around in his driver's seat. The details are foggy to everyone, but tried to turn the boat off, but his elbow hit the throttle before it happened. And so it pulled it completely into reverse, and the boat took off. And there was no one that could control it. The 2 dads were pinned to the floorboard, and it was racing towards 9 kids, and no one saw it coming. And my reaction was diving to the bottom of the lake, thought I'd be okay. The boat went right over top of me, and that propeller is probably 12 inches end to end, 450 horsepower pushing it, a lot of suction, a lot of turbulence. It pulled me right to the propeller and just started chopping me up, and I couldn't get away from it. I kept trying to pull away, and it would suck me right back, and it just was tearing me into pieces, and I couldn't do anything about it. And it finally ran into another boat. The propeller stopped. I floated out from underneath the boat, and a friend of mine, I was 15 at the time, and he was 18, and he lifted me up in his arms, one behind his head, one behind my knees, and picked me up out of the water. And I looked down, and I remember seeing the right leg come up out of the water, and it looked like somebody had taken a stick of dynamite and put it inside the leg and exploded it. And it literally, bones were sticking up, blood shooting all over the place. I have no idea how the thing was still there. And of course, that's when the pain kicks in, and it's excruciating, and I'm terrified. I remember looking back up at Michael, and he's covered in my blood, holding me in his arms at 18 years old, and pulls me over to this floating dock and sits me down, and they start working on me. I'm looking for my parents. I realized this was the first ski show my parents had ever missed. They're an hour and a half away. And as a parent myself, I just can't even imagine, that feeling, getting that phone call. And
You were 15?
I was 15, yes. And I'm under contractual obligation to tell you why my mother didn't make it to the ski show.
Please do.
Yeah, she doesn't want anyone to think she's a bad mom. So she had surgery and all of these things. So just in case someone asks my mom, she will, you can say, yes, he did tell us why you didn't make it. But anyway, so now they take off, and no cell phones in 91. There's no communication. There's just prayers and hoping it's going to be okay on the other end. And so anyway, I'm laying on the dock. I'm laying there. It is total chaos. I remember the first ambulance came, and the ambulance was called. And so I'm laying there on the dock, and I'm trying to control the situation. Like in my head, I'm thinking, okay, because I'm controlling. I'll admit that, and I like to control things in my life. But I was thinking 10 weeks to heal. This is going to be okay. I've had broken arms before, surgeries. It's going to be all right. Staples, and stitches. I've had it all. And so it's going to be okay, And so I'm laying there, and I'm actually, besides the pain, I'm at peace. Until someone said, hey, we got to get a mask and snorkel and see if we can find his foot. So,
Wow.
that was one of those moments that you don't ever think you're going to hear. I can control things that I've seen people get through before. I can control things that I have watched people overcome, even maybe in my own life, and can control those things and can imagine getting past those. I'd never seen anyone with one leg before. I'd never met anyone with one leg before, and I just couldn't imagine what that even meant. So I remember just saying, gosh, someone please knock me out. Take me out, put me in a coma, knock me in the head. I just don't want to remember any of this. I'll wake up. It'll all be over with. It'll all be a dream, something. It can't be real life. Thank God they didn't do that. I would have been dead. But they took me to the first hospital. It was totally crazy. They called a helicopter from Duke to come pick me up. There's a lot of craziness with that story as well. But they were actually asked to land at the airport and at the lake, to come pick me up. But the storm, there was a really bad storm, and they could not land. And I didn't know any of this. This is not even in my book. This came out like 28 years later after the book came out, and the life flight nurse read it. And she called me and she said, hey, it was amazing. Everything you wrote was incredible. I remember it to a T, but there are a few things you didn't write in there. I wish you would have let me know that you were writing a book. And so I was like, well, what are you talking about? She was like, we were supposed to go to the lake. We couldn't get there. The storms were bad. Duke called us and said, hey, bring the helicopter back. It's too dangerous. We have other patients we have to see. We need you to come back. And she told me on the phone, she said, you're really lucky that we don't always follow directions like we're supposed to. And that's not the theme of today. But sometimes your gut says, hey, don't go anywhere or do something. Is something telling you that against your better judgment that something should be done differently? And so they said they just hung out. They didn't go back. And they just waited for the storm to clear. And then they landed at the hospital. They found out where I had gone to. And she said, I ran into the emergency room and I wanted to see your vital signs. I wanted to see how you were doing. And she said, I saw your vital signs. She said, I've been in trauma nursing for 30 years. I've been on a life flight helicopter for 25. And never once in my life have I ever seen someone with your vital signs that ever survived. Wow. Not one. And she said, you were a dead 15-year-old kid on the table. There was nothing we could do to save you. There was nothing that, getting you to Duke wasn't going to work. You weren't going to last the flight. You were not going to be able to survive much longer. And then she stopped talking on the phone. And I just paused. And this is the first time I had ever heard this. This is, like I said, just a few years ago. This is like 5 years ago. And she said, I said, well, thank God you didn't stop working on me. She was like, no, we don't stop until you're dead. We don't stop working on you and trying to make things better until you actually die. And I was like, well, thank goodness. I was like, but it was crazy. It was, they tried to get me out to the helicopter. We went through the lobby of the hospital. My parents ran in at the same time. Total chaos. They were pushed aside. Said, get back in the car, drive to Duke. That's where he's going. It is insane. They get me out to the helicopter. They can't get me on the helicopter. I don't fit. Because they sent a small helicopter for a 15-year-old kid. I was 6'3". I was hanging off the stretcher. One leg was hanging off the stretcher. And so every time they slid me in, that foot kept hitting the front dash of the helicopter. They couldn't get the back end of the stretcher in. And so they were freaking out. She leaned us. She said, hey, we're going to get you to Duke. I promise you it's going to be the scariest thing you've ever had to do in your life. We're going to strap you down to the stretcher as tight as we can get you. But we're going to have to flip the stretcher upside down. And you're going to be looking at the concrete. It's going to be scary. But it's going to be okay. I promise you. And I'm not a good negotiating point in my life. So,
you're 15.
I'm 15 and I know nothing and I'm dying. So, next thing I know, she flips me upside down. I'm looking at she gets me into this thing. I meet her about a year later. Life Flight from Duke had a big, conference and I came and spoke and kind of told my side of things and, and how amazing it was. And, she said, do you remember what we went through to get you on that helicopter? And I said, yes, it was insane. She was like, do you know what you said to me though, after, I told you, my plan of getting you on the helicopter? Do you remember what you said to me? And I said, don't worry. If I fall off this stretcher, I won't run away. So, blood losing, dying makes you funny. I don't know. But anyway, it worked, got me to Duke. And she told me on the phone when she called me that day, just a few years ago after the book, she said, nothing in my medical knowledge ever in all of my experience can believe that you're alive. Wow. She said, but when you cracked that joke on that runway, she was like, he's going to make it. I don't know how he's going to make it. There's no medical reason why he's going to make it, but he's going to make it. So anyway, I tell lots of jokes on stage, so that's fun. So, but anyway, they got me to Duke. It was a long month. They did about 9 surgeries, only about 25% chance to live in the first surgery. And it was touch and go for a really long time. I don't think I knew that because I don't remember a lot of the first week for sure. And probably some of the second, but I was in and out of surgery so much and just really fighting for my life. But a lot of infection running through the body was what some of the rough stuff was. So yeah, man, the hospital stay was crazy. I don't know if you want me to continue or just, breaks and stuff. Yeah, fire away. We'll stop here. Chapter 1 over.
So you're 15 when this life-altering experience occurs. I can't even begin to process what that's like. So
yeah, I wouldn't have either.
Take me from 15 to you're at on stage or written this book. Like, how do you take something like this and transmute it into such a career?
Yeah, it was never a career. I remember, even after all of these things happened in my life and all the growth happened and things were okay, and I was moving on my life, I was sharing my story, and I started my senior year in high school at, a youth Sunday. That was the first time I had shared my story, and then people started asking for me to share it. So I would just go to youth groups, and I would go to churches. I would do whatever, share my story to whoever wanted to hear it. But for me, it was a giving back. It was I feel like I should just do this for all the people that helped me along the way. It can help people. It's me serving others. And I never, ever thought of, and never did take a dime for any of it. For over 20 years, I shared my story and never took anything for it, because that wasn't what my life was supposed to be. I was, supposed to go to college. I was supposed to get a job. I was supposed to have a career, all of these things. And so that's what I did. And then I went into physical therapy. I went into real estate. I went into financial advising. And then I started speaking a little more when my kids started being school age, and I would go to their schools and things. And then it started being spread around a lot. And so I built a website, and I started just kind of marketing myself just a little bit and saying, let's see what happens. And then all of these people started wanting to pay me to come and speak. And it was so uncomfortable. It was horrible. It was literally like, I was like, I don't want anything, but if you feel like you should, that's okay. I don't want to, I don't want to hurt your feelings or anything, but I was severely uncomfortable.
Like, you didn't want to profit. Is that
no, there was
feeling?
nothing to profit on, in my opinion. No, it was just me giving back and what I should be doing, because so many people saved my life. So many people were a part of my life, and whatever I can do, and came to speak to me when I was in the hospital. I had people that would visit, and I remember those things, good or bad, either way. But the time that people spent, and I just felt like that was me doing my part in giving back.
I think that's really important, because, we talk about this. We talked about it before we started recording about what chasing self-actualization is. And we're trying to figure it out. That's what the whole point of this podcast is. But what I feel like we're identifying more and more as we interview more people is that they want to share this with the world. It's not about money. It's not about fame. It's not about success. It's about, like, I want to give back. I want to help someone else figure out what I'm figuring out at this moment. And I do see that commonality amongst people that are chasing. Yeah. Our guests aren't always comfortable
with their calling. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about a part in your book that really stood out to me. I was reading through it, and there's a part, I'm going to read it now, where you said you had a question for someone. You were processing and dealing with it. It seems like you had kind of gotten to a point where you were on the upside, I guess, of the experience that you had. But you did have this one question, and you said in the book, I've heard all my life that God has a plan for our lives, and that he's had this plan for us since before birth. If he has our entire life planned, then obviously my getting run over by a boat was in his plan. Was getting devastated by a propeller all part of God's grand plan for my life? That really resonated with me. So I'm going to share a little bit on where I am right now. When Marisol and I met and started kicking off this podcast, I would say I was like at a real high point in my life, where my business and my home life and personal life had just really were reflecting who I felt I was and where I wanted to be in life. And then, after we record a few episodes and we're up and running and things are going really well, we had a devastating loss in our family. My nephew passed away. And there's been, and it's interesting because we talk a lot about manifesting around here and vibes and all these things. So I had actually journaled years ago when I first met you, and one day I'm doing a podcast with Chad Porter, and I had this in my head, and I was like, I will manifest it. This day will come.
Bless
and so here we are, and I'm driving here this morning, and I called my sister, and I said, this is a dream come true, but I didn't want to get out of bed this morning. And I don't want to do it. And I'm just in a place where the motivation to do the things that I love and care about isn't present, because I'm still feeling a lot of the loss of something that I thought was going to be in my life forever. Sure. So it really struck me when reading your book and thinking of your own story. And so I lay all of that on you, Chad Porter. What do you have to say about that?
Motivate her, Chad.
First off, just thanks for sharing. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that wasn't easy, but we've all been there. We all felt that feeling, you know. But yes, when that question was, I was on a Emmaus walk journey through the Methodist Church, and it was all a men's conference thing, and it's very deep. It's a week long, no cell phones, no nothing, or a long weekend, no cell phones, no. The pastors, there was probably 9 or 10 of them that were part of the staff, and they had asked that question, you know, if anybody would like to ask anything for any of the pastors, things you've been thinking about, blah, blah, blah. And so I started thinking they were just going to pull out some out of a hat and just answer them randomly. And so we had this little tiny little thing, and I wrote as small as I could, and I wrote that question. It was a lot to it, and blah, 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 and I wrote it. And I was totally at peace with my life, 100% okay with everything, not mad. God and I had our going at it, you know, for sure, for a very small period of time. But I was at peace, and everything was great at that point. So I said, you know what, I'm going to throw them a tough one because, you know, they're getting a lot of snowball, you know, softball, you know, easy, you know, questions. And so I threw that question out there and, you know, basically saying, hey, if I've always heard God has a plan for my life and if that's true and if in every little hair on my head and every plan of everything that's going to happen in my life is all plotted out. So was this his plan? You know, and I joke in the book saying he could have easily just put Jesus's face on a piece of toast, and that would have been a whole lot easier for me to come to a realization. What's even crazier about it is that 1 month before my accident, I gave my life to Christ, and you know, and so that was a huge part of my struggle. Was, is this what I got? Is this my gift for doing what I've been?
At
this is what I'm
15,
supposed to do.
That must have been I want to curse a mind fuck. Like, I mean, a month before you're 15 and you give your life to Christ, and then you have this accident. I can't imagine the rest.
Yeah, we went. There was a night of a lot of anger and a lot of. He didn't say a lot, but I did, and I got a lot out. But my question, you know, once again was just. Wasn't this extreme? Why would he do this? And so I could see them over there, and they got together. All of them got together. Usually it was just one pastor answering the questions. They literally teamed up with my question. And then they actually asked me to come sit with them afterwards. And they said, and every single one of them in their own way all said, God doesn't make bad things happen to us. That's not what this world is about. He has given this world free will. Lots of terrible things in this world. I mean, if he wanted to force us to love him, he could do that. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't. And he wants us to strive and reach. And there are going to be, with free will, people that choose otherwise, and things that happen, and bad things are going to happen, even to the most devoted. But what every single one of them did say, and I can living proof, is God can make some really horrible things out of some really terrible situations.
Yeah. I have a speech that I do on gratitude, and when I do it, afterwards I'll get asked, you know, well, how can I be grateful for, and it's usually something like cancer or my child's death, and I always go back to the story about, like, it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but at some point, what you're going through, there's going to be something to be grateful for it. And I know that for example, in my life with my brother's death, it happened when I was 9, very transformative moment in my life. How can I be grateful for that? Because it's the mom I am today is because of what happened, 30 some years ago. And I can't see it today, can't see it tomorrow. Yeah. But there's always something to be grateful for in an experience, as awful as the experience can be. Right. And that's my faith, I think, which, is a new thing for me as a longtime atheist. And, not to answer your question, but experiencing this with you, I don't know why it happened, but I see your strength and your resilience, and you're going through the human experience beautifully. It's
thank
a
you,
horrible,
Marisol.
it's not an easy experience. So.
I was thinking when I was driving here, like there was kind of two choices of how we go about today, because I'm on cloud nine a lot, and life's been good to me, and
I've never known you not to be.
Yeah, and I mean, and I can
It's
play
annoying,
the part
actually,
well
at
too.
times.
But
No, I'm just kidding.
out of a great respect for our listeners, I thought this is a good opportunity, even when life starts. When you really do the work and you're coming out on top, like things outside of our control happen. And I think I've naively thought at times, like, I've figured it out. Now I'm going to be okay forever. And then
I'm self-actualized.
out of left field and you're like, I'm not okay. And you just, so I think what you do, and I was on your website, chadporter.org, looking at like who you go speak for. And I'm sure even sometimes you're there when you're not feeling it.
1,000,000%.
And so I think the human experience, we're all looking to someone else, thinking that there's a way to transcend that, and yet most of us are just going through these cycles. And so during those times where that motivation is hard to reach for, and the inspiration that once really sparked us and, put a little skip in our step is just not there, but you do believe in a greater plan, which throughout your book, you grasped onto that really early. What is some things you share with people who you speak to in your life on that front?
Yeah, I share my story to help others, and obviously I make a living doing it now. I am finally got comfortable with turning that into a career, but I'm blessed over and over and over every single day with the story that I hear back. I go to build a career, I go to do this and that, and the tears and the hugs at the end and telling me their stories and things that they've gone through and all of these things. And, when these moments hit, these low moments like you're feeling, when they hit, our first reaction is we want to just crawl into a hole or back into bed or in a dark space and just be away from everyone.
And this is where you tell us that's great, right?
Do it for 24 hours.
Yes. Detox. But that's our first natural reaction is to do that. And what's so crazy it is literally the last thing that we should be doing. I know we need to process and go through our moments. And I wrote in the book, there wasn't a single day that I was ever alone in the hospital. Ever alone. Not one day. Someone was always staying with me at night. To the point I had a sign-up sheet that people would fill in, aunts and uncles, cousins, friends, whatever. Wow. I was never alone. But one of the worst days of my life, of the stay in the hospital, when I saw a videotape of amputees playing basketball, it crushed me because I was going to go play college football. I mean, I had a great career coming up and going through, and these guys, bless their heart, looked like one-legged people trying to play basketball. They could move, they couldn't run, they couldn't jump, and I'm blessed. Like I said, if any other time in my life, hugely inspiring, but for me, it wasn't. But I broke down, but yeah, it is.
And that's just hearing you share about that. That's a time where you are in a process of accepting, and I know even you shared because you played later. Basketball,
yes,
right?
Correct.
So it became inspiring to you, but I think too in reading your story and knowing you that these processes we go through where that inspiration's not inspiring that day. It's devastating because you're looking at something saying like, no, that's not me. And actually I talked about this before. As 5 years ago, I was in outpatient recovery, and I remember sitting in the room listening to people share their stories, and I was like, that's not me. And that yet it so is. So when you're in that place of accepting that you're at a place you don't want to be and you didn't anticipate being in, and just sort of the humility of that and like bringing acceptance to it. And that's part of that process. And so I think when I was like reading, there's so much inspiration in your story, and you as a person are very inspiring. But it does, and this is why you're a motivational figure, is because like that process, like that day and you don't share it in your book. Like you were like, that's cool. I'll do something else. Like it was devastating.
Oh, it's rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
I mean,
I have a question about pivoting. So, like, you had again, I can't get over the fact that you were 15. So you thought your life was going one way. You had to pivot. It feels like you had to pivot again in your career when you decided to.
if I'm constantly pivoting, I'm literally like a weeble wobble. You know, I mean, it's
Tell
all
me
over
about that, about trusting, if it the voice or God or the instincts. How I'm in that point right now. This is a new version of me that, I walked away from a 30-year career and I'm pivoting. Yeah. And it's scary. I feel like I'm on quicksand, but I anchor in my faith right now, which is a new experience for me to learn to trust that voice. How do you do that? How does?
Wow, I will first just say I'm just so grateful and thankful that I grew up in the church and I had parents who were Christian, so it was instilled in me. Did I listen to everything? No, just whatever pertained to me. That's kind of what you do growing up. And if this makes sense for me, then it's good. And the other stuff, it's okay. It can't be that bad. But pivoting is just it's one of those things for me. Everything going one way, all of these things, but the night that I laid down in that bed after watching that video, literally broke down. First time I ever cried because I wore a mask on my face, trying to being a smile on my face, for weeks, trying to make everybody else feel okay. And that night I was left alone. I had no one to wear my mask for, cried. And I asked why over and over and over. You'll probably have done that before a couple times. Yeah. And just screamed. And I have prayed my whole life, normally when I needed something or wanted to get out of something. That was, when you were younger. But I had never heard anything in my life, and that God had never spoken to me and never has since. But that night, I heard in my head, don't worry, you'll find out. And honestly, probably multiple people have heard those type of things or those things before, but yet if you don't have that faith that He's always going to be there no matter what. There's never going to be something too big that He can't get you through. If you don't have that faith, you're not going to hear it. Bob Bodine wrote a book a while back called Two Chairs, and I love the concept of it because it's literally, people say all the time, I pray, I never hear anything, nothing ever good happens, never hear anything. And I say, well, how long did you, and he would talk about, how long did you listen? And so the whole thing with his concept was he set up a room in his house that had two chairs, one for God and one for him. And he would sit down in the chair every morning. He would talk and pray. And however long he prayed, 2 times longer than that, he had to sit in silence and just wait and listen. 99 times out of 10, never heard a thing, but you're not going to hear anything if you're just always asking and talking. It's just like in life.
Yeah.
It gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth.
I was actually wondering, because I prayed, I was meditating, and I had this phrase where I said to my husband, he came home and I said, God put it on my heart to say this. And I was like, that's not me. Like, that's not a phrase yet. And do you use that phrase? I was wondering.
I have used it, yeah.
I think I took that from someone. That's not a Marisolism. And I said, what I had felt in my prayer was just this gratitude for him and everything that how he has supported me and loved me. And I just felt this overwhelming need to let him know. And he needed to hear it at that moment. I didn't know, it was a very beautiful moment, but it's me. It's these little, I'm going to trust that this, I was raised Catholic. So there's part of me, is that the devil?
Yeah. There's always 2 voices in there.
But so I'm learning to trust that voice a little bit, but I was really interested in hearing how does one divine that,
Yeah, I feel bad for those who don't have it.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as you have something that you believe will be there and that will ensure that your life is going to be good. as long as you will, be faithful. And yes, are bad things going to happen? 1,000,000,000%. But the people who, when things go wrong in their life and they don't have that faith, what on earth gets them through it? Like, how in the world, what do you lean on?
And I think we sometimes see where something tragic happens, there are those two roads, and out of that fire typically comes someone who rises up, as you have.
100%.
And some people turn bitter, and they can't find that, or they ignore it.
That was a really feasible choice for me.
Yeah, yeah. And I have had many times in my life where, bitterness kind of hovered and was like, "Hey, you want to hang out?" And I had to say, I'm not. And I feel like I was lucky and blessed to see what a lifetime of choosing bitterness has done. I've known people that made that choice, and I was able to, discern that. I know I don't want that.
Yeah.
I know that's not what I want.
That's how I sort of brought my way back into spirituality. I was going through a divorce. It was 10 years of contentious divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I was so angry and hurt. And the answer someone gave me was, well, you have to pray for him. My ex-husband, I was like,
squeeze me
5 minutes a day, every day. And it was hard. And I was, the bitterness was right here. I could tell you exactly where it was. It was right here. And almost 3 months, for 90 days, I just sat and for 5 minutes prayed for my ex-husband. And by the end of that period, it wasn't here anymore. It was like, I just wish the best for him. And
I remember when shortly after my middle son was diagnosed, and he's non-speaking autistic and 12 years old. And when we were kind of going through the process of learning about this and seeing what this meant for his life, and bitterness began to creep in, but I wasn't aware of it. I was busy, and this was shocking, and I wasn't really paying attention to how I was processing it. And I went to some meetings and met with other families and was able to see, like, there were two ways, and it's the same as everything in life, but this, like, really brought it to my attention. And I remember just praying for my son one night, and just the knowing, and I think this is what we're kind of talking about, like this knowing that things can work out for good. And it was that nothing can take his purpose from him. So whether he speaks or uses an AAC device or shows up like this or that he came here with divine purpose, and nothing can take that. And I mean, this is, what we're all realizing. And this is what got me out of bed this morning when I didn't feel like it. I'm here with divine purpose, and I'm going to show up. And whatever that looks like, because maybe what I thought this episode with Chad Porter was going to look like ended up being something different, but it ended up being what it needed to be.
Very different than what you originally thought 9 years ago, or however many years ago it was.
Think how beautiful so what I love about podcasts is that someone will listen to it a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. So there's at some point in time, someone who's going through grief that they can't imagine might hear this, and it is the motivation that they need. Right. So kudos to you as well as to our guests, because I've experienced this with you, and to get up and just show up is...
And it does come from, as is the theme in, what you share and what I believe, is just that even when it doesn't feel great, there's a higher purpose at play, and that you have purpose. And I believe that about anybody who's here. You're still here. You have purpose here.
But don't be a fool and think you can do it on alone. We're not built to do this stuff alone. We're not. I mean, there's too many trials, and the problem, that night in the hospital, I couldn't see past the darkness. I couldn't see anything good. No reason to think of anything good would come out of my life at a 15-year-old kid, and so it was so dark, and I thought about how can I take my life. I wanted to. I just could not go any further, and I couldn't do any more, and I couldn't see any good coming out. So I understand when people get in these situations and people say, oh, my God, I can't imagine doing that. I can. Like, I know what that feels like to can't see anything good. The world would be better without, And so, but I know that my faith in that one vague comment of, hey, you'll find out, it was enough. Because had I heard that in any other instance with no faith, I'd have been like, screw you.
Yeah.
You go feel better after this. It's all going to be fine, But that faith was just enough to go, okay, so I'm going to fight. Low expectations, but I'm going to fight and see what happens. And so that's what I did. And you just never know how good your life is going to be if you don't get up and fight every single day and give 100% over whatever it is you choose to do. The reason you didn't call me and cancel this morning, because you know that if you don't keep moving forward, if you keep all the stuff in the past, it's over. We can't change it. We can't do anything about it. We can learn, we can grow, we can mature, we can help others, but we can't change that. And everything that has happened in the past that people cannot let go of pulls us backwards from keeping from going forward. We just can't.
It's kind of like when you get to these moments in life where you have a script and then that's not what's playing out. And you feel like my script was better. Like I was going to have 2 legs in my script. I was going to have my nephew in my script. I was going to you're kind of going like, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure this master script is better than because that's the human conditioning. It's like, no, I had a plan. I swear it was better than this. And being able to let that go and say, there's something bigger than I can understand. I can't conceptualize this. This is actually for my highest good. This is actually the path I'm meant to be on, even though it's not my script, And then just the vagueness of you getting, like, you'll find out, is that what it was? Like, that's not even all that comforting.
No, it's kind of like a little smack on the butt by the coach on the way out. Oh, don't worry about the snapped arm into. Go play hard,
I know.
That's what it kind of.
But for you to anchor into it like you did.
At 15, yeah.
And a question for that is when somebody is, I think the way this is coming out to me and what I'm hearing is there's a choice in growing, cultivating, and hanging on to your faith. Like in that moment, it was pretty quiet. It was just, you want to stick around and see what happens, and you anchored into that. Right. And that there's kind of a choice there to say, this is all going to hell, this is bullshit, this shouldn't have happened, or to say, I'll find out.
Yeah.
I was going to say 2 things. I remember having a meeting with Girl Scouts. They were in middle school, and I was in one of my moods, I think, and I was just like, you've been dying since your first breath. Like, this life experience is not promised to you to be joyful and happy. The opportunities are there, but you have to have all the emotions. You have to experience the pain and the suffering and the all the ugliness of the world to truly be able to feel the beauty and the highness of the experience. Yeah. But this human experience is not easy. It's not. I mean, we're dying. You're dying. You're dying. You all over there dying.
We can say something encouraging as well. One of the things I was just thinking about. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I know, fast. I am really. The longer I go, the faster it's coming. So, But
the point I was going to say is not to lean into the fear aspects of life. Is accept it. Accept reality as it is an easier way to live your life than living through the expectations of the script.
Yeah.
I think we fool ourselves sometimes thinking that I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can get through this. I don't know if I can go past this. So here's what I tell people on stage. Listen, every challenge you have ever gone through in your entire life, every incredibly hard situation that you have dealt with in your entire life, you've passed it. You've accomplished it. You've gotten through it.
100% success rate.
Right. You're still here. And that is our point. You've never given up to the point where you're no longer here. So if you need some encouragement, listen, we have all been through crazy things. We're still breathing. We're still here. We still have a future. That's pretty amazing. You've done a great job so far. You've made it this far. So I think we feel like we're so not worthy of happiness, not we don't deserve it. It's crazy because there's a lot of people that feel that way.
I think most people, I feel, don't feel a sense of self-love or self-worth. They don't think that, I feel like a lot of people walk around not truly loving themselves or feeling worthy of loving themselves or God's love, and that's part of why we want to do this.
I think sometimes too, when people are coming from a place of lacking self-worth or feeling of shame or guilt or any of those lower level feelings, a lot of times we attach these outcomes to like punishment. Like, this is happening because like I'm not good enough, so everything sucks.
I deserve this. Yeah.
And honestly, this was one of the first like periods of my life where a challenge hit and I didn't go there. I was like, this is not about like, this is not pain, like I'm not getting punished, or it's not about deserving or punishment or any of that. And that's like all that inner work of just realizing like this is the obstacle course at hand, regardless of like, you know, whether you're struggling with some internal issues.
It's an interesting thing because watching you go through this experience, I've always had that fear of if things are going too well, something bad's going to happen. Like if I'm too happy, the shoe's going to drop, you know, and you didn't go into that. I didn't see you go into that despair of like, I was so happy that this is what happened to me, you know, and
I didn't think of it till you just mentioned it.
No, but that made me, I was like, for myself, meeting you, starting the podcast, lovely husband, I was like, oh crap, something bad's going to happen.
No,
but,
and I think that's part of that. So, you know, the thing I keep saying to myself, it rains on the just and the unjust. And also sometimes rain is good and sometimes it ruins a party. So life is just continuously happening. And I did note the polarity in my life that some of the things that I've desired for a very long time have come to fruition at the same time that I've experienced some losses that I wasn't prepared for. Like, are we ever, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And there's definitely been a lot of polarity. And there's times where you're at the top and I don't know. It's just and I think this too, the more I've gotten the chance to talk with people that are in motivational speaking or have written books, or these are the people that I think have figured it out and they've found a way to escape ever feeling bad. And then I realize that they know. True. And I go, oh, like we all just have shitty days. Come on now.
And I would just to say to you as well, I mean, I'm proud of you for we're here today. But I think a lot of people feel ashamed to have these low feelings too, and to have these feelings, and I hope they don't ever hear me talking in a positive way and think, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this. I shouldn't be feeling this low. There's nothing wrong with processing your emotions. If you feel it. Tears are cleansing, man. Let them go. I don't know how many times I have been in really low spots and I just went and cried like a baby. And people laugh because I do cry a lot. But
I think that's great, and more men need to do it.
But yeah, it's not that I can help it. I wish I didn't, but I do a lot. But yeah, it's cleansing and it feels. But process it, feel it, and then you move on. You have to move on. But you always can't do that alone. You have to ask for help. Yeah. People are so afraid to ask for help.
I had years where I thought, and especially when I went through with my son's diagnosis, I thought to process my feelings meant that I wasn't grateful.
Right.
So I'm sad, therefore I'm not grateful for him. Or I'm having a hard time because, and I even kind of went there in this experience, like, well, but look at the three beautiful, like trying to tell myself, like, I shouldn't feel bad because I still have good things. And having to recognize that, like, this is not a contest of what we do or don't have. Like, our feelings are just these emotions that rise up. And sometimes huge over the loss of loved ones, sometimes small over getting the red light, but they're not to be feared, you know?
Well, I think that's a wonderful place to end this.
Chad,
motivating.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It was great to speak with you.
I'm so thankful, and I'm glad you found me a long time ago, and we finally worked this out. And also, honestly, I don't know who all your other guests and who you have coming down the pipe, but it took us a while to get to this point, and maybe we needed to be this far down the road to do this after what you've kind of gone through. It all works in for a purpose.
Divine timing.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is another episode of Chasing Self Actualization. Thank you for joining us. Please make sure to like and subscribe and follow us for more information.
And to learn more about our guest or what we're doing next, you can check out our website at chasingselfactualization.com.